What's up guys, welcome back. This is Anime Crossover. You'll be watching What If Naruto Was Almost Killed by Goku Part 13. Now, let's begin. Cell was experiencing intense suffering, leading him to wish for the presence of pain resistance genes. A disturbing crack resonated, indicating the fracture of Cell's skull from the rear. His ensuing screams of pain underscored the extent of his terror. What was this? He is unable to land a hit on Naruto. While Naruto consistently strikes him, he resembles a stationary target. What on earth was this? I am quite frustrated. After receiving a powerful kick to his sternum, Cell coughed up blood as he was relentlessly pursued by Naruto. This is unfortunate. He is not allowing me any time to breathe. I cannot continue in this manner. It feels unsustainable. Bang! A sudden impact to his spine nearly compromised Cell's wings, causing his eyes to bulge dramatically, appearing excessively bloodshot. Cell's cognitive abilities were beginning to deteriorate. Naruto's assault was unyielding. He was employing Ultra Instinct and exhibited an extraordinary level of precision and efficiency in battle. Cell had no viable opportunity for success in countering, unless he either acquires Ultra Instinct or significantly surpasses Naruto in power. However, he was unable to manage both tasks. He had made attempts but did not succeed, so what are his next steps? This situation proved to be unproductive. Unfortunately, the Z fighters below shared in Cell's situation, with most expressing a sigh of relief, with the notable exceptions of Goku and Piccolo. Son, Naruto is unlikely to endure for much longer. While evading the attack from Cell Jr., Piccolo remarked, and Goku, engaged in a fistfight with another opponent, acknowledged him with a nod without turning around. Indeed, he is intermittently transitioning in and out of that state, but he will conclude the task before that occurs. Goku observed that Naruto's hair transitioned between white and black at varying intervals, demonstrating inconsistency and indicating a deficiency in the technique Naruto was employing. However, it is important to note that this was a formidable form. Cell would not endure for an extended period, preventing Naruto from regaining his composure. As Goku observed the situation, he noticed that Yamcha and Chiaotzu were engaged in a battle with Cell Jr. Tien and appeared to be facing difficulties. However, before he could offer assistance, the Cell Jr. engaging him began to retaliate aggressively, prompting Goku to refocus on his battle. Chiaotzu was struck by a direct attack from the Cell Jr. As the individual responsible for maintaining the field, he became a target for the enemy and ultimately made a critical error, leading to the direct hit. Upon impact with the ground, his body generated a crater due to the immense force of the attack. Chiaotzu, are you feeling all right? Tien inquired with a tone of concern, recognizing that they were individually at a disadvantage against their opponent. It was crucial for them to avoid direct hits, yet Chiaotzu made an error and ultimately fell victim to the enemy's attack. I am fine. Chiaotzu's faint voice emerged from the crater, having successfully halted the attack at the last moment by focusing all of his telekinetic abilities in a single location. This enabled him to withstand the force of the Cell Jr.'s punch. Tien and Yamcha exhaled with relief upon confirming Chiaotzu's well-being, then redirected their attention to the adversary in front of them. The Cell Juniors were honing their skills over time, making it progressively more challenging to defeat them. Despite the challenges, there remained a sense of optimism. Piccolo, Goku, Gohan, Nappa, and Krillin demonstrated strength that matched or exceeded that of the Cell Juniors. While the process of overcoming them may be prolonged, victory is still within reach. The Nappa's mouth cannon swiftly targeted the head of the Cell Jr., catching him by surprise and resulting in the vaporization of the upper portion of his body. However, the lower half of the Cell Jr. continued to move erratically, attempting to evade Nappa. Where do you believe you are headed? Nappa smirked. He possessed extensive experience in combat against various unusual species. This was not the first instance he had encountered a species capable of surviving without its upper half. In an environment such as this, where Gohan, Goten, or Trunks might exhibit hesitation or discomfort, Nappa seized the moment and advanced decisively. Holding the lower half of the Cell Jr. in his hands. I have successfully caught your attention. In that moment, the first individual among the competitors completed his bout. As Nappa neared the conclusion of his battle, Goku increased his pace. He was no longer treating the situation with utmost seriousness, especially with Naruto present. After engaging with Cell Jr. for a while and enjoying the experience, he recognized that it was time to bring this encounter to a close as well. Goku, in his Super Saiyan 2 form, materialized before Cell Jr. using instant transmission. He aimed his palm at the opponent's head and released a focused blue ki blast, defeating his opponent with precision, achieving total destruction. Piccolo was on the verge of concluding his battle. A special beam cannon had successfully struck his opponent, and now Piccolo was preparing to launch him into the air to eliminate him with a ki blast. Gohan. He also demonstrated sufficient energy to focus on Gohan, and what he observed brought him satisfaction. Gohan was no longer exhibiting mercy and had successfully eliminated his opponent. Unbeknownst to Piccolo, the sight of Cell Jr. once more evoked memories for Gohan of Videl and Aunt Miguel's passing. This emotional trigger was sufficient for him to unleash his full potential and pursue a decisive victory. With most of the Z fighters having concluded their battles, only the Cell Jr. engaged with the humans was left. Krillin unexpectedly caught his opponent off guard with a Destructo Disc and ultimately finished him with a Kamehameha. However, the Tien trio continued to struggle against their adversary. Yamcha, can you engage him for a moment? Tien shouted while catching his breath, and Yamcha, though slightly trembling, proceeded to confront Cell Jr. regardless. I find that amusing. The Cell Jr. mocked and engaged with Yamcha, treating the attacks as mere games. However, for Yamcha, these actions were perilous. If this continued, it would not only distract him but also lead to his immediate demise. However, the Cell Jr. emerged unexpectedly, prompting a gasp from Yamcha, who then smiled, recognizing that this was Chiaozu providing support from the sidelines. In alignment with his emotions, Chiaozu, who had fallen, was diligently rising and making a concerted effort to manage the Cell Jr. Observing that the confrontation was still in progress and the trio was not in any immediate peril, the Z fighters opted to remain on the sidelines and allow the group to conclude their own conflict. Please accept this. Yamcha advanced swiftly towards the Cell Jr. and executed a tackle, securing him in a chokehold. Yes, the Cell Jr. faced challenges against Chiaozu's telekinesis. However, he ultimately proved to be more powerful than Chiaozu. Once he comprehended the situation, the impact of the telekinesis diminished significantly. He once more acquired knowledge and adjusted accordingly. I am quite frustrated. Yamcha expelled blood from his elbow to his abdomen, his grip nearly faltering, yet he managed to maintain his hold once again. Laughter. The Cell Jr. continued to strike Yamcha in the kidneys repeatedly, resulting in bloodshot eyes for Yamcha. However, both he and Chiaozu maintained their grip. Tien, please expedite your actions, Yamcha shouted, and Tien's veins became prominent as he concentrated with greater intensity, continuously channeling energy into his tri-beam. He had been charging this singular attack throughout the duration. A complete power tri-beam shot. With this move, he will deplete all his energy in one go, making it crucial for this to connect. With determination evident in his expression, Tien summoned the last of his strength for his attack and shouted with intensity. At this moment, Yamcha, as he released the Cell Jr., Yamcha narrowly evaded the yellow beam of energy, shielding his eyes with his hands while his body was propelled away by the sheer force of the attack. Breathless, I asked, did we make it? Yamcha inquired, holding his side, his attention directed towards the mountain into which the Cell Jr. had fallen, the one that the tri-beam had carved a square hole into. The rocks on the mountain continued to tumble down, while Tien, Yamcha, and Chiaozu were incapacitated, all three observing the mountain intently. However, the abrupt surge of energy caused them to squint, the stones dispersed, and there he stood. The Blue Cell Jr. sustained significant injuries and burns, leaving his body scarred, yet he remained standing. What is the current situation? Yamcha struck the ground in frustration, while all three observed helplessly as the Cell Jr. tilted his head and laughed. I see. Explosion. The abrupt meteor-like impact occurred directly above the Cell Jr., generating a substantial hemisphere of green energy. The energy unique to Naruto. This prompted the Z fighters to pause and exchange glances with one another. Could that have been Cell? Krillin inquired, noting that the meteor that struck the junior previously resembled Cell quite closely. Goku massaged the back of his neck and chuckled heartily. Indeed, that was Cell. Immediately following Goku's statement, Naruto appeared before the Z fighters through teleportation. His battle armor was in immaculate condition, and his hair was white, complemented by his gray eyes. "Congratulations, Uncle Naruto. Thank you for your assistance." Gohan and Yamcha spoke in succession, while Naruto exhaled and deactivated his Ultra Instinct, subsequently nodding with a weary smile at both of them. Prior to addressing Gohan's issues, he is not deceased at this time, but he is currently incapacitated. Cell, in contrast to 17 and 18, is susceptible to injury and can become weaker as a consequence. This is why he willingly accepted the Senzu bean that Goku offered him in the original. Having battled the legendary Super Saiyan and faced overwhelming defeat, his situation was dire. However, Piccolo preferred to avoid risks, thus he expressed, "Conclude the matter decisively, do not allow him to linger." Naruto scratched his cheek and spoke with a sense of resignation. "I misjudged my capabilities. The demands of Ultra Instinct are quite taxing on the body. Currently, I find myself too fatigued to complete the task at hand." Piccolo cast a sidelong glance at Naruto. "You Saiyans. Very well, I will handle it myself," Piccolo stated before cracking his knuckles. The dust had settled, revealing the gasping Cell to everyone present. He had endured extreme violence. His natural defenses were compromised, his wings broken, his tail damaged. Yet, he appeared furious, unable to comprehend the situation. He had always considered himself flawless. How could this happen? As Piccolo approached, Cell experienced for the first time the fear that his victims had endured, prompting him to retreat. He felt a sense of fear, concern for his safety. He recognized the urgency to take action, yet found himself in a situation where he felt powerless. Cell was on the ground, attempting to crawl away, but his severe injuries made even that difficult. As Piccolo was on the verge of arrival, his fate appeared to be sealed. "I should have completed Naruto prior to this, unfortunately. Not everyone has the opportunity to encounter the legendary Super Saiyan. It is a uniquely remarkable experience. The experience of contending with an unstoppable force without a steadfast shield is certainly challenging, yet it is undeniably unique. Please allow me to handle the situation." At the moment Piccolo was poised to strike Cell, he heard a voice and turned to see Nappa approaching from behind. With a furrowed brow, Piccolo regarded Nappa, who met his gaze and began to articulate his perspective in a measured manner. "He has eliminated Vegeta. Allow me to conclude the task on behalf of the king." Nappa's determination was evident, and Piccolo, having fused with Kami, displayed a greater sense of empathy than before. He recognized the significance of Nappa's actions. Vegeta served as a Saiyan under the leadership of Naruto, who held the title of Saiyan King. Despite Naruto's efforts, he was unable to defeat Vegeta, prompting Nappa to seek the opportunity to accomplish this task on his behalf. Driven by his pride and a desire for personal retribution, Naruto was determined to confront Cell alone. Nappa may not outwardly express it, but he was undoubtedly the most compassionate Saiyan among them, particularly in his deep connection with his people. Proceed with the task at hand, ensuring a thorough conclusion. Piccolo retreated, allowing Nappa to take the advantageous position, and Nappa immediately displayed a smirk as he observed the struggling Cell. "Rest assured, I will give it my utmost effort." Nappa expressed his amusement with a hearty laugh, embodying the essence of ultimate Nappa in that moment. He believed this would suffice to conclude the battle against the severely weakened Super Perfect Cell. However, exercising prudence, he opted to employ his most formidable technique. This Cell represents the most formidable ability of the Saiyan race. Nappa elevated his palm in a gripping manner and focused intently. Shortly, a luminous sphere of energy started to form atop Nappa's palm. Nappa, with a confident expression, gazed at the artificial moon in his hands before raising his arm and launching it into the sky with a commanding shout. Indeed, Nappa observed as the moon ascended rapidly, settling at a notable elevation, capturing his attention. At present, only Naruto and he possessed tails, while the others had lost theirs at various times. Therefore, He did not concern himself with the possibility of someone like Kakarot, who lacked training, transforming inadvertently. Nappa began to emit a low growl as his eyes glowed red, his stature increased significantly, and his physique became even more muscular. Shortly thereafter, a towering Uzaru emerged in place of Nappa, letting out a powerful roar to announce its presence. Which term is more appealing? Mystic Uzaru or Ultimate Uzaru? Naruto contemplated the situation. It had been a considerable amount of time since Nappa transformed into Uzaru. No Saiyan had achieved the Ultimate Uzaru form until today, marking a significant development. Naruto was uncertain about the characteristics and implications of this new form. Cell, please exit. Nappa appeared to be in good condition, allowing Naruto to set aside his concerns. Ultimately, utilizing all of one's strength in base form was not significantly different from Nappa's typical Uzaru transformation. Cell appeared both terrified and enraged as he gazed at the imposing figure of Nappa and the moon that was the source of his predicament. I am quite frustrated. What is the reason for this? I am the ideal individual. Why? The Cell faltered mid-sentence and fell silent, which struck Nappa as unusual. However, he chose not to dwell on it, recognizing that individuals often succumb to despair in the face of insurmountable challenges. However, Cell experienced an unusual sensation. His thoughts became unclear, and he found himself in a state of confusion, as if slipping into a daze. Piccolo's eyes narrowed as he detected a loud heartbeat emanating from Cell. Piccolo observed Cell intently. Cell appeared to be gazing vacantly at the artificial moon, as though he had relinquished all hope. However, Piccolo sensed an unsettling feeling, as if something was amiss. Nappa, please be efficient with your time. Conclude the task promptly. Piccolo spoke aloud, yet the majority of the Z fighters, including Nappa, were not particularly concerned at that moment, which made Piccolo's remarks unexpected for them. Yamcha gestured towards Piccolo with a wave and shared a light-hearted laugh. Calm down, Piccolo. It appears that Cell has lost all hope. Just look at him, he isn't even making an effort anymore. However, Piccolo remained unconvinced, and his sense of foreboding intensified with each passing moment. Nappa, please expedite the process. Piccolo raised his voice in a manner that startled both Nappa and Naruto. The latter, lacking the sensitivity of Namekian ears, was puzzled by Piccolo's unusual behavior. Clearly, something was amiss for Piccolo to react in such a way. Nappa eventually regained his composure after being reprimanded by Piccolo, though he remained perplexed by Piccolo's behavior. As a Saiyan, Nappa was not accustomed to taking orders. I appreciate your input, but I will address the matter in my own way. Piccolo reacted with disdain upon hearing those words. This individual, disregarding all other considerations, Piccolo initiated a concentrated charge of a Masenko and directed it towards Cell. Greetings. Nappa expressed his frustration vocally. He believed that this was his target, and Piccolo had overstepped his boundaries. The Z fighters were taken aback by Piccolo's actions. It was an unspoken rule to refrain from interfering in another's battle. However, their eyes widened as they observed that despite Piccolo's Masenko overwhelming Cell, his energy remained undiminished. Piccolo, could you please clarify the situation? Naruto inquired. Visibly taken aback, he was unsettled by the situation. Something unusual was occurring with Cell, who should have been incapacitated by the recent explosion. However, Piccolo was not required to respond to Naruto, as the deep growl emanating from Cell's throat conveyed the message clearly. Naruto's eyes widened as he observed Cell increasing in size, his energy escalating with each passing second, and his gaze becoming utterly bloodthirsty. Oh my, is that an Uzaru? Cell has the ability to transform into Uzaru. Naruto internally chastised himself for overlooking such an evident detail. Naturally, Cell had the capability to transform into Uzaru, why would he not? He possessed Saiyan DNA, enabling him to transform into a Super Saiyan. He had a tail, fulfilling all the necessary criteria for this transformation. Uzaru was present at that location. The sole reason he did not transform into Uzaru in the original was due to the daytime conditions and the absence of a moon. However, the most challenging aspect was that the Cell was a Super Saiyan, indicating that this was not an ordinary Uzaru, It was a golden Uzaru. I am quite frustrated. Piccolo expressed his frustration, realizing that his attack had not succeeded and that Cell had now become more powerful than before. Naruto was fatigued from utilizing Ultra Instinct. Aside from him, none of the others were capable of defeating even Super Perfect Cell. Now, Cell had further amplified his power multiple times on top of that. The colossal Cell had undergone his transformation, yet he appeared indifferent as he roared and thrashed about instinctively. Nappa's eyes narrowed as the large, flailing hand approached him rapidly. Nappa successfully blocked the attack just in time, yet the immense force behind it propelled his substantial Uzaru form into the air. His body collided with the mountains. Nappa's substantial physique compressed the cliffs as if they were mere sandcastles, yet he continued to tumble backwards before ultimately coming to a halt after striking another cliff. Breathing heavily, Nappa observed his hands, which trembled from the effort of withstanding the recent impact. Nappa recognized that he had committed a significant error. Not only had he failed to avenge Vegeta, but he had also placed everyone in a precarious situation. Their exhaustion was palpable. One member had fallen, and Cell, their adversary, had grown exponentially more powerful. The victory that had seemed so attainable slipped away in an instant. The colossal Cell emitted a powerful roar, exhibiting erratic behavior as he thrashed his immense form. Energy waves emanated from his mouth, dispersing through the air indiscriminately. He was an uncontrollable Uzaru lacking mental clarity, yet Naruto expressed gratitude for that situation. The current behavior of Cell mirrors that of Cell Max once again, particularly in relation to Gohan Beast. Is this what Dr. Hito intended by creating a more powerful iteration of Cell? Was Cell Max essentially Cell with his Uzaru genes permanently activated? This accounts for his considerable size and apparent lack of intellect, I presume. Naruto skillfully evaded a powerful blast, contemplating the rapid escalation of his opponents, transitioning from Super Perfect Cell to Cell Max. The disparity in power between the two was significant. However, Naruto had an additional concern weighing on his mind. If he achieves mastery over Golden Uzaru, will he transform into Super Saiyan 4? While GT is considered non-canon, the Lookout also did not feature any Black Dragon Balls, and the design of Super Saiyan 4 was originally illustrated by the author himself. The Ikari mode utilized by Broly exhibited eyes reminiscent of Super Saiyan 4, suggesting that the transformation holds potential for existence, despite the universe in which it was depicted not showcasing it. Naruto was not willing to take any risks in this situation. One Cell Max was already more than sufficient trouble. All individuals, please direct your focus towards the artificial moon. As Naruto contemplated the implications of Golden Uzaru, Goku arrived at a critical moment. He quickly devised an effective strategy and rallied everyone to implement it seamlessly. Cell Max was maneuvering erratically around the artificial moon, which could result in their attacks being either effective or ineffective due to his massive form obstructing their paths. However, with a coordinated effort from multiple attackers, it was likely that at least one strike would connect. Goku's exclamation prompted immediate readiness among the Z fighters, who commenced charging their respective attacks. Piccolo readied a specialized beam cannon, while Tien and Chiaotzu focused their energy for the Dodan Ray. Yamcha utilized the Spirit Ball technique, and Krillin assembled a split Kamehameha. Gohan developed a Masenko, and Goku opted for the traditional Kamehameha. Uzaru Nappa's mouth turned blue in preparation for the mouth blast he was about to unleash. Naruto utilized his self-created eraser cannon, demonstrating the respect he commands due to his legendary status. Cell Max, still emitting a fierce roar, showed no signs of turning around or acknowledging the impending attacks. It was clear that he had completely lost control. The Z fighters seized this opportunity and commenced their attack. A series of energy attacks surged toward the artificial moon, with Cell Max positioned in front absorbing the majority of the impact. A significant explosion occurred directly on Cell Max's body, eliciting a roar of pain from him as successive waves of energy beams continued to bombard him. With each assault, he staggers backwards, his flailing arms gradually moving farther from the reach of the fake moon. Finally, a white ball of energy struck the fake moon. Detonating the entire thing caused Nappa Uzaru to snarl and begin to shrink back down. After a few seconds, he returned to his natural appearance, but Nappa did not seem pleased. His eyes were filled with horror as he peered at the regenerating Cell Max, which was not at all diminished. How? This should not be happening. Nappa yelled, but Cell Max, who was still roaring in agony, had recovered and was now looking at the bugs that had just harmed him. Goku seemed nervous as well. This was not part of their plan. If Cell went Uzaru, the missing moon should have prevented his metamorphosis. It worked that way for Saiyans. Tien sweated profusely as he saw Cell Max begin to come at them. He was empty of energy and had nowhere to go. He was a burden right now. Why isn't Cell turning back? Tien expressed dissatisfaction to no one in particular. But Naruto continued gazing at Cell Max, who stayed as he was and was starting to realize the dilemma. Looking at the gathering, who were either outraged or completely confused, Naruto decided to explain what had gone wrong. Guys, we seem to have started on the wrong foot. Just because us Saiyans lose our Uzaru when the moon is gone, we thought Cell would do the same. But we overlooked a crucial thing. Cell is not a Saiyan, he is a hybrid organism. Frieza's transformation abilities, Piccolo giant form, he has them all. Naruto concluded his supposition by looking attentively at Cell Max, who had began to dash towards them like a savage beast. The ability to revert from one form to another is something Cell took from Frieza, and Uzaru is a form transformation. Now that Cell has transformed once into his Uzaru, this state has been permanently recorded into his DNA. He can stay as Cell Max as long as he wants, just like Frieza. Piccolo became terrified after hearing Naruto's assumption. If this were true, it was the worst-case situation. Looking at Cell Max, who was about to crash with their group, the Z fighters gathered themselves and leapt out of the path. Naruto snatched up Tien, Yamcha, and Chiaozu using telekinesis. They were exhausted and out of energy. They had also used up Senzu beans for training, with the most of it going to Vegeta, who had trained his Super Saiyan 3 to eliminate its adverse effects. Unfortunately, Vegeta was no longer present, therefore all of those Senzus were rendered ineffective. Naruto landed on the ground and shielded his hands from the wind gusts caused by the enormous Cell Max passing in front of them. Keeping the three on the ground, Naruto turned to them and said, "You guys sit this one out for now." The humans did not dispute about it. They realized they couldn't fight just now, so they nodded and stepped away. After the three had backed off, Naruto turned back and stared at Cell Max, who had stopped running after missing them and was now turning around to face them, angry. An emotion. Shit. Naruto was sweating, and Cell was displaying the first symptoms of emotion. He was recovering awareness, wasn't he? We can't let this happen. We can't defeat a Super Saiyan 4 counterpart of Cell right now. Even if it doesn't happen, one aware Golden Uzaru is enough to have us destroyed. Naruto realized this and turned to confront the Z warriors, exclaiming, "Guys, Cell is regaining consciousness, we have to finish him now." The Z warriors were astonished to hear it. They had assumed Uzaru was difficult to tame, but they soon discovered that Cell was regaining consciousness. And all arrived to the same conclusion. If Cell isn't killed right now, they won't have a chance against him after this. The only reason they were able to avoid Cell Max was because he was acting on impulse. If this much raw strength was applied in a controlled manner, they would die instantaneously. The situation was severe, but the Z warriors were not a bunch of cowards. They were all among the finest in their respective fields. Even then, Cell Max was getting more deadly, and no one knew what to do. How were they expected to injure him? Cell was 10 times as powerful as his super perfect self, his version of Super Saiyan 2, which was 1,000 times stronger than his base. Their strongest fighters had multipliers of approximately 100 at best, thus this was a terrible battle. "Goku, what do we do?" Krillin shouted, attempting to avoid Cell's hands, which were slapping him away like a fly. The Z fighters were now flying all about Cell, confusing him, but this would only last so long. Goku, meantime, was frowning in irritation, his thoughts racing but unable to produce anything. "I don't know, Krillin. We have tried hitting him with our strongest attacks, but it didn't work. When they attempted to demolish the fake moon, the majority of their attacks fell directly on Cell Max, but they just injured him rather than killed him. And when Cell is not destroyed all at once, he regenerates, particularly now that Cell Max's regeneration has gone above and beyond. Goku's head jerked to the sound of Cell finally hitting someone, and he saw who had been struck. Naruto, are you alright? Naruto was unable to evade and was struck by Cell Max. Nevertheless, Goku swiftly detected Naruto's energy and launched instant transmission. And arrived alongside Naruto, who was laying on some rocks and panting. He was pretty well drained dry after using Extreme Instinct a while ago, and the ongoing struggle against Cell Max made him unable to relax even for a short time. Naruto was exhausted right now, and the only reason he wasn't out of the game was because he was the famed Super Saiyan. Anybody else in his position would be knocked out or killed. Huff huff, Kakarot, we gotta kill Cell somehow. Naruto spoke in a strained voice, huffing and puffing with each line, but he was the famed Super Saiyan, and as time passed, he gradually regained his breath. If the Z fighters could keep Cell occupied for an hour or two, Naruto would be able to recuperate completely on his own. But Cell Max was regaining awareness, and they did not have the luxury of time. Goku rubbed the back of his skull in exasperation before speaking. But I can't think of anything, Naruto. He is too strong. None of our best attacks did anything. I don't think there is anything we can do right now. Naruto anticipated the response, but he couldn't give up without a struggle. Looking at the more difficult to avoid Cell Max, who was unconcerned about his surroundings, but wasn't able to take the upper hand since individuals worked together. Wait. Working together. Naruto's brows furrowed as he glanced at Goku, who was standing alongside him and stared at Cell Max, before taking a deep breath. He had an idea. Kakarot, let's fuse. Goku turned to face Naruto and inquired in a puzzled tone. Fusion. What is that? Naruto had gathered his breath and lifted himself up off the ground, but he still chose to sit while outlining his strategy. It's a technique performed in the form of a dance. It allows two fighters of equal strength to fuse and create a stronger fighter. That might be our only hope right now. Goku had a serious expression after hearing that, but he didn't want to watch Cell Max destroy everything either. Goku was not one to whine, but he felt unhappy that so much devastation had occurred since their aim was him. He didn't want Cell or Gero to continue their havoc, or for fresh foes to endlessly seek him out, all while destroying Earth and murdering at will. He knew he enjoyed fighting, but he was also a guy with a feeling of duty. Initially, he believed he would rather be dead if it prevented adversaries from attacking Earth and his family. This was why the self-righteous Chi-Chi was believed to have calmed down after Goku's death. She knew him well and appreciated exactly what he had done for them. To keep the Earth, his friends, and his family safe, Goku, despite his desire to confront Cell straight on, would not mind utilizing fusion if it meant ending this swiftly. Okay. Let's do this. Goku spoke after reaching a choice, with a serious expression on his face, yet his grin was also there, indicating that he had made a decision. Naruto nodded in satisfaction after hearing Goku's choice. He, too, was a Saiyan, and he understood how acquiring strength via something like fusion felt to them. It was a horrible sensation, as if one wasn't competent enough to do a task on one's own. This was why they avoided fusion later on. It was not a nice feeling. The human equivalent would be having a trailer while your adversary controls the whole Earth. This was how extreme a Saiyan's sentiments of inferiority to an adversary were. Although this was foolish, it was all part of a Saiyan's battle instincts. Kakarot, pay attention, I'll show you how it's done. Naruto didn't worry about the other fighters not knowing what they were doing since Piccolo was there to explain it, and they saw their greatest warriors devising a strategy. Stand like this. I know this a bit funny looking, but bear with it. Then Naruto performed the full fusion dance from memory. After all, his memory had been improved by his legendary transformation, so recalling how the fusion dance was presented in the series was not difficult. Fusion dancing was a simple notion that needed just proper posture and an equal quantity of ki. Okay, I'll give it a try. Goku scratched his head after seeing the odd dance, but didn't worry too much, and began attempting the specific stances one by one. Naruto provided corrections individually while simultaneously practicing on his own. It was more beneficial to dedicate additional time to practice than to attempt a flawed fusion and subsequently waste half an hour on retries. Consequently, Naruto and Goku began to dance in an awkward manner to the side, while the Z fighters observed with a sense of disbelief. If Piccolo had not informed them that this was intended to be a technique, they would undoubtedly be at a loss. Goku and Naruto required a total of 15 minutes to comprehend the necessary steps for executing the fusion dance, both individually and in partnership. The finger-touching step was practiced as a distinct movement several times to ensure that the fusion is executed flawlessly. They can no longer afford to proceed in that manner. Cell Max was beginning to articulate phrases such as, die. His regaining of vocabulary indicates the emergence of higher brain functions, which poses a significant concern for all involved. All right, Kakarot, I believe we have this process refined to a high standard. Naruto observed Goku's flawless fusion dance moves and concluded that it was the right moment to attempt it himself. Goku felt a sense of relief as he wiped the sweat from his brow following his brother's confirmation. Mastering this dance while synchronizing with another individual proved to be quite challenging. The second part of the fusion dance has now commenced. Goku, whose base form was Super Saiyan due to his training in the time chamber, began to exhibit unusual behavior. He was gradually reducing his energy levels while maintaining his Super Saiyan form. However, no one considered it unusual, as it was the proper method for executing the fusion dance. The more chaotic one's condition during fusion, the shorter the duration of the fusion would be. It was a matter of Goku adjusting his power to align with Naruto's base level, which falls between Super Full Power Saiyan and Goku's base, or Naruto utilizing Akari to correspond with Goku's Super Saiyan, potentially placing the fusion under considerable strain. The choice among these options was quite clear and straightforward. After a brief moment of attuning to Naruto's ki and adjusting his Super Saiyan state accordingly, Goku nodded in acknowledgement. Naruto uncrossed his hands and cracked his neck, surprised that his first fusion would occur so unexpectedly. Very well, Kakarot, let us proceed with this. Certainly, let's proceed with this. The two brothers assumed their positions, placing their hands on opposite sides and gesturing with their fingers in an amusing manner. Phooey. They then proceeded to walk on tiptoes, gradually approaching one another in a synchronized manner. Soon, upon reaching the appropriate distance, they both leaned towards one another simultaneously, and their outstretched fingers made contact with precision. A significant surge of ki captured the Z fighters' attention as the forms of Naruto and Goku began to merge. Even the unpredictable Cell Max ceased his attempts to swat away the flies as he observed the menacing energy body. Before the gaze of the Z fighters and Cell Max, the fusion body ultimately unified from two distinct individuals, and with a final flickering glow, the energy enveloping the new figure dissipated. The tall individual donned white baggy pants, an orange and black open-chested jacket, and exhibited a face reminiscent of Goku, complemented by hair akin to Naruto's. The Z fighters exchanged astonished glances. Is that you, Goku? Could it be that you are Naruto? I am unable to provide an answer. Krillin observed the new warrior with a look of confusion. From the outset, Naruto and Goku bore a resemblance, akin to brothers, but at this moment, distinguishing between them had become impossible. Upon hearing Krillin's words, the new warrior gradually opened his eyes and regarded him with a smirk. I am neither Naruto nor Kakarot. Please feel free to refer to me as Gerudo. A voice that distinctly combined two tones emerged from the new fighter, yet it was not at all off-putting. Instead, it conveyed a sense of divine resonance. Alongside the formidable energy that Gerudo radiated, they recognized that they had a significant asset within their ranks. Cell, you have been exhibiting considerable intensity for an extended period. It may be time to bring this to a conclusion, don't you think? Gerudo promptly turned to face Cell, offering a confident smirk, all while under the watchful gaze of everyone present. He disappeared and re-emerged directly in front of Cell Max, his expression radiating complete confidence. The Z fighters, along with Cell, were taken aback by this demonstration, as none of them could keep pace with the speed exhibited by Gerudo. Remarkable, this wasn't instantaneous transmission, yet I was unable to track it at all. Piccolo contemplated as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Naruto exhibited an extraordinary level of strength, surpassing anything they had encountered before. And the most frightening aspect was that he had not yet undergone his transformation. Naruto consistently displays a smirk, indicating his enjoyment of the power boost he has received. As a newly formed fusion, he lacked extensive knowledge of his abilities. Even Vegito had to rely on fundamental punches and kicks following his initial fusion against Buu. Nevertheless, Naruto favored learning through experience in battle. This was the characteristic of Goku that was evident in him. Had it been solely Naruto, this would not have been his initial course of action. However, fusion also presents unpredictability. The type of warrior produced can vary significantly, depending entirely on which traits are more dominant. I am quite frustrated. Cell Max, remaining stationary since Naruto's arrival, emitted a low growl. Naruto observed Cell Max with a sense of amusement and then, without any indication, struck the prominent feature of Cell Max's large head. Cell Max's enormous form was propelled backward, as if it were not a mere human who had delivered the kick, but rather an individual of considerable stature, far exceeding his own size. The massive body impacted the mountains, and Cell Max was entirely engulfed in dust, remaining motionless since his descent. Naruto observed Cell's inability to move in his motionless state, yet he chose not to pursue. Instead, he folded his hands and patiently awaited his opponent's recovery. Once more, Goku's characteristics are highlighted following the emergence of Naruto's traits from the earlier unexpected assault. The two contrasting personalities integrated seamlessly in Naruto. Despite this being a matter of Saiyan instinct, Piccolo appeared to lack appreciation for it. Naruto, please complete the task at hand and conclude the matter promptly. Naruto appeared indifferent and simply dismissed Piccolo, but before Piccolo could become frustrated, fearing the Saiyans might repeat their previous actions, Naruto addressed him. It is advisable to remain composed. Pursuing him is precisely what he desires. The Z fighters observed Naruto with a sense of perplexity, and at that moment, the rocks that had entombed Cell Max began to shift. A hand emerged from the debris, and gradually, Cell Max's body ascended from the dust, this time devoid of his former fury. Cell Max, adjusting his green bio-armor marked by dust, regarded Naruto with keen interest. At what point did you realize I was not being genuine? The Z fighters appeared utterly astonished. It seemed Cell was merely pretending. Since when has this occurred? Were they being manipulated throughout the entire process? Naruto appeared unfazed, as he had anticipated this outcome based on his earlier remarks. He responded to Cell with a courteous smile before continuing the conversation. From the moment you recognized my strength and became aware again. Naruto tapped his head with his pointer finger, a smirk appearing on his face. You were relatively straightforward to understand. To all observers, the final statement appeared as though Naruto was ridiculing Cell's capacity for action. However, only Naruto was aware that he was, in fact, reading Cell's mind, a skill derived from Naruto that he could utilize at deeper levels due to his fused nature. When you all fused, I was concerned that we had been in potential danger without realizing it. Krillin placed a hand on his chest and exhaled deeply. If this were Cell, lying in wait to catch them off guard or behaving like a predator all along, they would be concerned that he had strategies they were unaware of. Cell responded with a smile upon hearing the answer, appearing to have restored his previous composure as he spoke with poise. Thank you for your assistance, Naruto. I appreciate your help in refocusing my thoughts. As a gesture of gratitude, please leave. Suddenly, Cell appeared before Naruto, having utilized instant transmission. Before anyone could register their astonishment at Cell's mastery of the technique, he delivered a powerful punch to Naruto. The Z fighters were forcefully displaced by the intense wind generated by the attack. Once they regained their footing on different surfaces in the environment, they shielded their eyes and eventually succeeded in observing the battlefield. They exhaled in relief. The unexpected assault from Cell Max had indeed made contact, but it struck Naruto's shin. Naruto effortlessly countered Cell Max's unexpected assault, maintaining a confident smirk characteristic of a Saiyan. It appears that this battle is poised to shift in their favor this time. With hands folded, spiky hair gently swaying in the breeze, and one leg positioned in a semi-blocking stance, Naruto effectively countered Cell Max. He was suspended in midair with a smile on his face, and as Cell looked on in disbelief at his attack being effortlessly blocked, Naruto narrowed his eyes. With a fluid motion reminiscent of gliding on ice, Naruto elegantly shifted his leg from the blocking stance and elevated his hand. A large erasure cannon was formed mid-spin, which Naruto launched like a cannonball towards Cell's head. Explosion, resulting in Cell's head spontaneously combusting, leading to his complete erasure from existence as the attack's name implies. Cell Max staggered backward, lacking a head, yet his body remained upright. Instinctively, Cell's hands reached for his head, but they could only grasp a stump. Causing Cell to stagger back once more, his panicked state was short-lived, as the flesh on his stump unnaturally compressed inward, suggesting something was concealed within his torso. In an unexpected turn of events, a new head emerged from Cell's neck stump, as if it had been concealed within his torso all along. Naruto examined the display thoughtfully. The immortality of Majin Buu and Zamasu significantly surpasses this, and it is also rather unappealing. Certainly, if it were more beneficial, Naruto would overlook any unpleasantness. However, in terms of utility, it significantly lagged behind the other two. Cell Max, having regrown his head, was filled with fear and anxiety. This was yet another attack he was unable to defend against. He couldn't help but wonder what might be targeted next time. Naruto. Cell glared at the awaiting Naruto, clearly dissatisfied with Naruto's demonstration of skill. He experienced the sensation of being inexperienced, manipulated by a senior martial artist, which Cell found to be quite unsettling. However, even in such a situation, he maintained a level of composure. Naruto, your strength is impressive, surpassing my own. What is the duration of your endurance in that state? Cell inquired with a furtive expression, which did not go unnoticed by Naruto, prompting him to raise his eyebrows in response. I am capable of maintaining this form for a duration of 30 minutes. What is your inquiry? In a significant moment during the fight, Goku's character was once again revealed, disclosing a critical detail that Naruto would have never shared. However, once again, Naruto, who was also involved in this fusion, exhibited his characteristics. After sharing this information, his energy began to surge, indicating his readiness to confront Cell before the 30-minute mark elapsed. Cell was unaware of the conflicting thoughts in his opponent's mind, as all his focus was directed towards enduring the next 30 minutes. He understood there was only one method by which he could endure the onslaught. Cell directed a menacing gaze at Naruto, raising his voice in a manner that revealed the underlying anger in his words. What is the matter with it? In just 30 minutes, is it possible for you to end my life? I am Cell. I possess the ability to recover from any injury you may cause, and a small entity such as yourself will never be able to completely eradicate my existence. I am unstoppable. Do you hear me? Cell expressed his frustration, revealing his discontent with being perceived as merely a target for others. However, there was a subtle sense of pride in his words. Regardless of their desires for this to be untrue, Cell was indeed accurate. Now, as Cell Max, he had grown to an enormous size. Ensuring that every single cell of such a large creature was completely eradicated proved to be quite challenging. It appears that Naruto has also come to this realization, as his eyes narrowed upon hearing Cell's words. Are you attempting to outlast me through regeneration? Without any additional commentary, Naruto instantaneously transmitted to Cell, forming an eraser cannon with both hands. This rendered Cell unable to respond, and before he could evade, Naruto unleashed the continuously expanding erasure cannon upon Cell Max. He had resolved to eliminate Cell, and that was precisely his intention. I am experiencing a moment of frustration. Cell reacted with intense fear as he was struck by the light green energy, his body disintegrating piece by piece while he experienced excruciating pain coursing through him. Regrettably, within moments, the screams ceased suddenly, and Cell's presence was eliminated from existence. Did we succeed? Krillin inquired with uncertainty, as he could no longer sense Cell's presence. Did that mean they had emerged victorious? The Z fighters attempted to sense Cell. However, after a few moments, they were unable to do so. Gradually, smiles began to appear on their faces. We have achieved victory. We have successfully accomplished our goal. Well done, King Kakarot. The Z fighters celebrated their victory with enthusiasm. However, it was only Piccolo and Tien who expressed concern. Naruto remained stationary following the discharge of his erasure cannon. He appeared even more serious than he had previously. Unaware of the situation, Satan and the camera crew began moving swiftly towards Naruto, aiming to secure the latest interview. Please hold on, there appears to be an issue. Piccolo expressed his concerns, but they went unheeded as the camera crew was determined to capture the latest scoop. When a small, wiggling green mass materialized in midair and rapidly expanded to the size of a mountain, the crew was left astonished and immobilized. Satan was filled with fear as he witnessed the mass transform into the form of Cell, prompting him to scream in terror. Supervisor, assistance is required. Fortunately, his calls appeared to have been acknowledged, as Naruto materialized before the team, gathered them using telekinesis, and teleported them beyond Cell Max's reach. Bang! And just in time, as that was precisely where Cell Max's newly regenerated body made contact. With a renewed sense of assurance in his regeneration, Cell Max let out a powerful roar, as though all his concerns had been alleviated. Laughter. You will not succeed in eliminating me, Naruto. In an unexpected turn of events, Naruto refrained from countering Cell's remarks. Cell Max's instincts proved accurate. His size rendered him impervious to defeat in a single strike, and upon incineration, the remaining cells became exceedingly difficult to locate. He was essentially impervious to being eliminated in a single strike, which was the sole method for his defeat. It was not feasible to achieve this given the existing power gap. However, the unfortunate news did not end there. Naruto regarded Cell with a serious expression while positioned alongside the camera crew, who were capturing a close-up of the moment. Cell then delivered another piece of news to them. You can perceive it, can't you, Naruto? Indeed, the more you attempt to harm me, the more resilient I will grow. Unless you can eliminate me before I have the opportunity to regenerate, I will consistently emerge stronger. I embody excellence. Similar to the original scenario, after regenerating from a single cell, he immediately ascended to Super Saiyan 2. In this instance, Cell underwent a comparable transformation, attributed to the Saiyan's inherent capability known as the Zenkai Boost. A Zenkai Boost was activated due to severe injuries. For Saiyans, this phenomenon ceases to occur after a specific duration. However, Cell has notably enhanced this constraint. Cell possessed the genetic material of both King Cold and Piccolo, in addition to Saiyan genes. In contrast to Saiyans, King Cold's inherent physical strength and potential were superior, while Piccolo's regenerative abilities could be activated even with a single cell remaining, distinguishing him from the Saiyan lineage. This allows Cell's Zenkai to persist for a significantly extended duration compared to ours. This implies that each effort to eliminate him will only serve to enhance his strength. Naruto observed Cell with a serious expression, while the other Z fighters regarded Cell's enhanced abilities with visible concern. They anticipated that the collaboration of their top fighters would yield a solution. They can still accomplish this, it simply requires a strategic plan to ensure that Cell cannot escape. Regardless of the Z fighters' internal discussions, Cell experienced a profound emotional response, revealing an unexpected capacity for growth even in the face of severe injury. He was elated, as he understood that the only remaining risk to his life was becoming completely trapped. However, he had mastered instant transmission specifically for situations like this. He cannot be trapped, he cannot be killed, he is invincible. With a calculated gaze directed at his opponent, Cell displayed a confident smirk. Naruto, please proceed. We shall proceed with our tournament. However, Naruto was resolute in his stance. He shook his head in denial and swiftly appeared before Cell. In this instance, Cell was able to match Naruto's speed effectively. Cell acted swiftly, directing his pointed nails towards Naruto as he utilized his palm in a slicing motion. This pace, Naruto experienced a moment of surprise as Cell's speed matched his own in the fused state. Cell's nails were not to be confronted directly, prompting Naruto to quickly raise his hands in defense. A round, bubble-like green barrier enveloped his body, effectively blocking the hand knife with ease. Cell appeared indifferent to the situation and withdrew his hand, subsequently launching a series of rapid slashes with both hands. The repeated impact against the barrier gradually started to weaken it, and then, unexpectedly, it began to give way. The barrier collapsed entirely, propelling Naruto's body into the mountains, where it struck the rock formations and became entombed in the debris. "Father, Uncle Naruto," Gohan expressed his concern, realizing that Naruto had been struck. How could this happen? Nappa placed a hand on Gohan's head, effectively halting the child's emotional fluctuations. "Please remain calm. Naruto is still very much in the game." In accordance with Nappa's statements, the debris was cleared, revealing a completely unscathed Naruto on the ground, standing without any injuries. He appeared to be completely unaffected and simply stood there, exuding an intimidating presence. Cell was surprised that his attack had no effect, but he quickly regained his composure. "Regardless, I am unable to eliminate him, and he is equally incapable of doing so to me. However, I am confident in my abilities, and he is operating under a deadline. My task is simply to maintain. Please wait until my time is up." "Is that all, Cell?" "Regrettably, that opportunity will not be available to you. I do not repeat the same error, and it is important to recall the source of that characteristic, Cell." Naruto concluded Cell's thoughts with a smile. Then, before Cell's transformed visage, he clenched both fists and bent down. As Naruto yelled, his energy surged forth dramatically, ascending in an exaggerated manner. Gradually, the white aura enveloping him began to flicker and transform into a golden yellow. The Z fighters observed the display with wide eyes, and Cell expressed his fear. "No, unfeasible. What are the steps to achieve Super Saiyan transformation?" Naruto was never capable of achieving Super Saiyan status, a fact that Cell was well aware of. He also speculated after his recent Cell Max form that Naruto's yellow-eyed state was related to Uzaru, which required a tail, something Goku lacked. Consequently, neither Cell nor the Z fighters anticipated Naruto's transformation, as neither of the fusion partners possessed the ability to execute each other's transformation. Thus, it raises the question of how the fusion was expected to achieve any transformation at all. Ahem. The intense ki that was resonating throughout the planet indicated unmistakably that Naruto not only had the ability to transform into a Super Saiyan, but his Super Saiyan form was truly unparalleled. As the skies trembled and the ground fractured, Naruto's hair began to emit a yellow glow, his already imposing stature expanded, and his eyes turned entirely white. "What is that? That does not resemble Super Saiyan in any way." Nappa hesitated, as this version of Naruto may resemble a Super Saiyan, yet there were significant distinctions. The power increase for one was remarkably high, surpassing 50 and approaching a boost of 500 times. Naruto's eyes had turned entirely white, having rolled back in his head. Finally, his physique had undergone a remarkable transformation. He had become a formidable presence of muscle. However, the Z fighters sensed that he was not constrained by either speed or stamina. Could this be the legendary Super Saiyan? Gohan inquired cautiously, aware that Naruto was the renowned Super Saiyan. However, since no one had witnessed his specific transformation, it was possible that his father's fusion with his uncle had also led to a legendary Super Saiyan form. Ultimately, one of the participants was a truly legendary Saiyan, and Gohan's question prompted a collective realization among all the Z fighters. Indeed, this may be the moment we've been anticipating. Indeed, this is unquestionably the renowned Super Saiyan. Nappa expressed his excitement with a broad smile, finally witnessing the legendary Super Saiyan. It was clear why this being was held in such high regard. While their transformations were fluctuating around 50 times, Naruto had directly achieved a 500 times transformation. This remarkable transformation of his must be the one referenced in the legend, as anything else would lack coherence. Absolutely not. This is highly unexpected. Cell's commanding voice captured everyone's attention, making them realize the gravity of the transformation faced by the individual confronting it. Naruto has ceased his yelling and appears to have successfully completed his transformation to his satisfaction. His golden hair emanated a subtle green aura, while his featureless white eyes fixed intently on Cell. He remained silent, yet the rhythm of Cell's own heartbeat filled the air with sound. Cell experienced a profound sense of fear, trembling noticeably as he confronted the overwhelming power emanating from Naruto, which rendered him momentarily immobilized. "No, please spare me. Please, spare me." Cell turned around and fled, his fear rendering him irrational. He no longer cared about the tournament or defeating Goku, all he desired was to escape, to find a place far removed from this nightmare. Naruto remained still in response to Cell's pleas for mercy, yet the prominent veins on his forehead indicated a clear unwillingness to grant Cell any reprieve, as he was determined to put an end to the ongoing violence. Ascending into the atmosphere at a moderate pace, Naruto observed Cell Max attempting to flee, soaring into the skies in an effort to leave the planet entirely. Cell's speed was impressive, and he quickly disappeared from view. However, Naruto's unremarkable eyes appeared to perceive him with remarkable clarity. Omega Blaster. These two words were the sole utterance from Naruto, preceding a profound transformation in the world's hues. The process began with energy accumulating in Naruto's palms, leading to a transformation of the world that transitioned from gray to green, then to yellow, and ultimately to white. The entire environment appeared to be influenced by an alternate dimension, yet the Z-Fighters were perceptive enough to recognize that this was merely the residual impact of Naruto's ki accumulation. As the less formidable Z-Fighters started to believe that the world might meet its demise, Naruto retracted his hands and assumed a throwing stance. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto's veins bulged as he exerted a tremendous amount of force through his hands. He released the attack, and the Omega Blaster sped towards Cell, who had traversed the vast distance in mere seconds. Allowing just a moment for Cell to pivot and observe the incoming assault from the blue planet. Why is that so? I am the ideal entity. A massive explosion occurred in the vastness of space, illuminating the side of the Earth facing the blast with an overwhelming intensity of light, rendering visibility to pure white for an extended period. All that could be heard was a powerful ringing sound, emanating from the very atmosphere as it trembled. It seemed as though the entire population of Earth had been subjected to Krillin's solar flare attack simultaneously. Fortunately, this condition on Earth was temporary, and once the Z-Fighters regained their visibility, they discovered that Naruto. Father. Greetings, Uncle Naruto. Returned to the distinct identities of Naruto and Goku. Hello, I am here. Goku responded wearily and settled onto the ground without any visual representation. The previous attack had drained them of so much energy that the fusion disintegrated almost instantly, leaving Goku feeling extremely fatigued at this moment. Additionally, Naruto, positioned nearby, also succumbed to exhaustion, collapsing onto the ground without making any effort to sit up. He simply reclined flat on the surface. We have successfully completed the task. The cell is no longer operational. We are fortunate to have avoided a significant error. As Naruto contemplated these thoughts, he remained still while the Z-Fighters engaged in conversation and the camera crew initiated their excitement. He was indifferent to those concerns. His primary desire was to unwind for a period. Having accomplished sufficient tasks for the day, he warranted a moment of respite. A year has elapsed since the defeat of Cell, and this past year has been notably filled with significant events. The entire world witnessed the Cell games, and satellites from Capsule Corporation also captured images of Cell being disintegrated in space. In conjunction with intentional propaganda from King Furry, the Earthlings were acutely aware of the magnitude of the crisis. Dr. Gero was left to bear the burden of disgrace, while Naruto was celebrated as the hero. This year, a character resembling Naruto, accompanied by a figure embodying Satan, undertook numerous global tours, significantly elevating Naruto's popularity. However, the presence of this character alongside Satan's family raised several inquiries, which Bulma addressed with considerable frustration, ensuring all questions were effectively suppressed. Bulma has been quite occupied this year, not only overseeing Satan's affairs but also managing Naruto. The son of the current Saiyan prince. Naruto, could you please supervise Junior for a period of time? I am unable to come over at this moment. Bulma called out from her lab, prompting Naruto, who was meditating, to open his green eyes in response. He directed his attention to the crib, where a miniature version of himself was attempting to climb over using his tail, resulting in a disarray of the area. Offering a subtle smile, Naruto exhaled, and his eyes reverted to their original black, along with his blonde hair. As Naruto approached his son, Renji, he gently lifted the young child. Indeed, Renji exhibited remarkable courage and began to laugh joyfully, leading Naruto to place him on his shoulder as they made their way toward the garden. "You small one, I am attempting to manage my Super Saiyan abilities. Was it necessary to create a mess at this moment?" Renji, naturally, did not comprehend a single word and simply laughed joyfully while perched on his father's shoulder. Shaking his head, Naruto gently patted his son's long mane, which mirrored his own in every detail. While it may seem amusing, this is a significant matter. Boo will emerge in a few years, and I must not present myself as a raging monster before that time. Your father is the renowned Super Saiyan. While this grants him unparalleled strength, his Super Saiyan form is equally challenging to manage. I would appreciate your understanding and support as I take the time to practice, thank you. Please remain silent until I am able to merge Akari with my Super Saiyan form. The ensuing conversation in baby talk prompted a sigh from Naruto. He recognized that he would not have the opportunity to train with full dedication at this moment. Among all his children, Renji proved to be the most challenging to manage. It was not solely due to his playful demeanor, but also his exceptionally high power level. The infant was delivered with a power level of 10,000. You know, I initially believed you might be a legendary Super Saiyan as well, but your mother informs me that your strength is primarily due to inheriting my physique. Discuss the advantages you've gained in your journey to success. Your siblings have not achieved what you have, as they did not experience the same fortunate circumstances. Certainly, Renji did not experience the same fortune as others, considering he was conceived prior to Naruto's transformation into the legendary Super Saiyan. The duration of the android arc was notably shorter in comparison to the original, and Renji's emergence took an atypically long time. Otherwise, his arrival would have occurred sooner, rather than following Cell's defeat. Bulma remained uncertain about the reasons behind Renji's extended gestation period. However, the tests indicated that he was healthy, leading to the conclusion that his power level of 10,000 was beyond what Bulma could manage, which resulted in a prolonged development time. As Naruto contemplated these thoughts, he arrived at the garden and took a seat. Shortly after he settled down, Ranfin approached him with excitement evident in her eyes. "King, are you going for a walk?" Naruto directed his gaze towards Ranfin and offered a smile. She held a bald baby girl in her arms, with a tail trailing behind her, indicating her identity as a Saiyan. "Hello Ranfin, I am accompanying the prince for a walk. How are you? How is young Fasha progressing?" Gently touching the baby girl's cheeks, Naruto spoke in a gentle tone. "You genuinely embody your father's legacy." Redirecting his gaze to the gleaming bald head, he suppressed a chuckle and remarked. In several respects, however, Ranfin became aware of the situation and narrowed her eyes, yet her options were limited. This individual held a position of great authority, and his assertion was accurate. Fasha, having been born without hair like the majority of infants, should have developed hair by this stage. Despite Nappa's reassurance that he once had a full head of lush hair in his youth, her concerns remained unaddressed. She was an attractive woman with remarkable hair. She preferred that her daughter not inherit that trait from her father. Indeed. Haha. Ranfin chuckled softly and took a seat next to Naruto on the bench. She was not a Saiyan. She was an Earthling. Therefore, even when Nappa advised her that it was unnecessary to maintain a positive relationship with his superior or to seek his favor, she chose to disregard his counsel. Her understanding was clear. Maintaining a connection with Naruto and serving as his right-hand man provided Nappa with the substantial income that supported their household. Consequently, she made it her priority to foster amicable relations with his superior, despite her husband's inability to grasp this reality. Once again, she should consider Nappa's advice. It's not as though I would abandon him for another Saiyan, as there are none remaining. Naruto contemplated internally while attentively nodding in agreement with Ranfin's discussion. His mind was currently at ease, as Buu was still approximately 6 years away. He had successfully unlocked his Super Saiyan form, thereby fulfilling the Super Saiyan aspect of his legendary title. Fusing into Naruto offered him a glimpse of Goku's Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2 transformations, allowing Naruto to unlock the form on his own. Although he went insane the first time he used it, Goku, Gohan, Nappa, Vegeta, Krillin, and Piccolo had to battle him furiously before he regained control. Given Naruto's rage, they nearly needed to be wished back. "Oh, hello, is that you, Mr. Goku?" Ranfan's unexpected shout jolted Naruto out of his reverie. Glancing towards the direction Goku's ki was coming from, Naruto noticed his brother. But just as he was going to embrace him, he observed a baby in his arms, and the strangest thing was that the infant had a halo on his head. "Kakarot, how did you get that baby killed?" asked a perplexed Naruto. Goku chuckled and massaged the back of his head. "He hasn't died. He is Goten, and although he is partially dead, he is also alive," Goku stated while raising a finger, which further bewildered Naruto and Ranfan, so he explained a bit more. "I kinda forgot to wish Chi-Chi back with everything going on, so when we wished everyone killed by Cell back I remembered and went to meet her using instant transmission. She was in hell for making a ruckus in King Yema's office, but honestly hell wasn't all that bad. There were many Gohans playing while a lot of books lay around everywhere." Goku scratched his head and murmured, "I'm confused. But that seems to really make Chi-Chi angry. She was screaming her lungs out and threatening them with something before I arrived." Goku answered with a wide grin. "Just today King Yema told me Goten was born. He really gave me an earful for this. Supposedly this is the first time a baby is born from living human and someone from the other world." Naruto blinked many times as he comprehended everything, while Ranfan concentrated on something else. "So you toyed with your wife's soul. Then is that child a human or a ghost?" Goku chuckled, as if he didn't know what "tangled" meant, and explained. "Goten is both alive and dead. You see he has this halo because of Otherworld, but he can stay in the living world for as long as he wants." Naruto blinked again, supposing his brother meant that Goten could go to the Otherworld and then return to the living world whenever he wanted. That was sick. Goku's progeny seemed to be in a league of their own from birth. With Naruto fulfilling his job as a father and Goku giving Gohan a new sibling, things were going well for the Z Warriors. There was tranquility, no word of fresh dangers, and it was the perfect moment to unwind after the continual high-pressure period that had began since Naruto's arrival. This feeling of serenity had made some of the Z Warriors sluggish. Yamcha had quit training entirely after a year of little advancement, and Tien and Chiaozu, although training, made no progress either. Even still, they didn't give up, continually seeking for a fresh route out, as seen by their dojo activity. "Ha!" The cries of students rang out in the practice grounds, while Tien sat and meditated on one of the 3 major seats above. The pupils were now being taught by the 2 surviving professors, Chiaozu and Yamcha. Yamcha, unlike the original, had remained relatively present after regaining his confidence. Because of the perspective unlock, he knew he wasn't utterly hopeless. Although he had quit training after a year of work with no results, his plan was to take a break and see if he might get inspiration from the kids below. That was why he chose to stay with Tien when he was given the job of sensei. "Yamcha-sensei, I can feel it," a bald-headed guy in his 20s shouted, surprised and giddy. Yamcha turned to face the man who had cried out to him. "Oh, Scale, it's you. Did you sense your ki so quickly? Man, talk about brilliance. No surprise Naruto suggested you." Yamcha hailed the guy, who had arrived with Naruto's endorsement letter. He was one among the first to join their newly established dojo. In fact, if Naruto hadn't advertised it for them, so many pupils would have arrived in such a short period of time. So, although Yamcha paid extra attention to Scale as a result of this, he didn't expect him to do anything so soon. Yamcha smiled as he patted the sweaty man's shoulder. "You surprised me. I thought for sure you would have taken a lot longer, with you having no prior martial arts experience and all." Scale was not one to be bashful about praises. In fact, he was quite the contrary, standing with his head held high and a smile on his face for everybody to see. After hearing so much praise from Yamcha, Scale decided to conceal the truth that Naruto gave him Nature Ki, which enabled him to detect his own ki so swiftly. He was already used to managing ki before he ever discovered it. So now that I have completed the first step, what next, Yamcha-sensei? Scale asked, making sure the surrounding practicing men could hear him well, as a method of expressing his supremacy. In the end, he was a member of society's evil side. His first reaction when visiting a new location was to assess the risk levels, and then exert his domination over what he could. He did the same thing here, swiftly gaining a big number of followers. He was also certain that with this latest statement, he would rise even higher on the totem pole. Ha ha ha. Yamcha chuckled and motioned Scale to follow him to another location, which Scale obeyed with his head held high. But what Scale didn't realize was that Yamcha was aware of all of this. After all, he wasn't a martial artist at all, but rather a bandit. Yamcha was well aware that being a desert bandit was not a career for the ignorant, so he let it go. The only individuals that joined Scale ignoring practice were those who had no desire of developing. This only made his work simpler in identifying the excellent ones. And that is the best of all worlds. I hope one of these surviving folks may provide me with the motivation I need. Yamcha reflected as he walked Scale about his new training room. After that was completed, Yamcha went swiftly since he still had people to watch and teach. Scale watched Yamcha go, then took in the new training room and drew a sigh. He pulled out a wallet from his pocket and gazed at a photo of his wife Ruli and kid Sharpener. I can do it. If I grow strong enough, I'll acquire a steady position at Mr. Naruto's firm, and we'll be able to live the life of our dreams. This was what spurred Scale to do what he usually did, work on his objectives. Meanwhile, Vital was working on her own. Vital huffed and puffed as she kicked the sandbag. She was exhausted but eager to continue training. Vital's somber expression belied her youth, yet this was what dying had done to her. She had grown up in a day, and once Naruto had brought her back, she had taken the initiative to request training. Although Naruto couldn't afford the time to personally teach her, he did provide her with scientific training methods created by Bulma in her free time. Goten, come here. Unlike his future bride, Gohan's expression was not serious, but rather quite the contrary. He was playing as enthusiastically as he could with his brother, and he was so thrilled to have a sibling that he skipped his study time to play with Goten. So, despite falling behind on his study plan, Gohan was doing well cognitively, emotionally, and physically. And, according to the Ox King, after all he had been through, he deserved some alone time. Krillin, like Gohan, was in a good mood. He was now out with his wife Tights and having a fantastic time. How is that, honey? That's nice. But it's too pricey. Krillin, how about this? The newlyweds were shopping and selecting items for their new house. Their wedding was conducted a week earlier, and everyone had come to celebrate. It was a wonderful day in Krillin's life, and it would only grow better with Earth at peace. While the newlywed couple rushed around the mall, 18 was seated at a cafe next to them, eating ice cream. She was the only Z warrior with nothing to do. She was simply roaming about aimlessly, helping people whenever she could, and attempting in her own way to make up for any future wrongdoings. She was doing well overall, but she wanted to manage her recently established habit of consuming sweets. Who knows whether her android body was resistant to fat? This was not something she wanted to chance. Og. While 18 was having her ice cream, a loud yell broke out, but she did not hear it, or, more accurately, no one on Earth did. As this came from Vegeta, who was practicing on another world and attempting to defeat Super Saiyan properly. He was the only Z warrior who never stopped training. His wounded ego drove him on even when there was no fresh danger, and he could feel it in his bones. He was getting near to Super Saiyan 2. The Z warriors spent their days in various ways, and days quickly became into months, and months into years. 6 years passed in a hurry, and the winds of destiny began to blow again. Somewhere in the wide cosmos, the absent demon King Dabura had set a new destination for his master. What's the destination? Earth is a little-known planet located in the North Quadrant. Two powerful warplanes collided at dazzling speeds in the yard of the capsule firm. Their bodies could not be seen with the human eye, and all they could be perceived by was their incredible ki. Bang! So, it turns out that one of the warriors had a little slip up, and in the heat of that fast-paced spar, that tiny mistake led to him losing control of the whole battle. Next thing you know, he's getting blasted right down to the ground. Ugh! Come on! The guy who got knocked down yelled out in pain, his blonde hair and Goku-like face twisted into an expression of agony, while his white pants and orange-black half-jacket were covered in dust. The warrior, having just taken down his opponent, landed on the ground with a thump, not really caring about the state his rival was in. His long, spiky mane was a bright yellow, just like the guy below, but his white armor was spotless, not a speck of dirt on it. Another key difference between the man below and the one standing above him was that the victorious warrior had no pupils. Two pure white eyes gazed down at the fallen warrior, a smile on their face. "Looks like you lost, Gogeta," the winner said, and Gogeta, feeling furious, slammed his fist into the ground when he heard that. Naruto, seriously. This is the third time now," Gogeta said, clearly frustrated, but just as he was about to make another move against his opponent, his body suddenly erupted in a blinding light. So, they split into two separate entities, Goku and Vegeta. Ouch! That really hurts. Wow. Goku and Vegeta didn't look surprised by what was happening, they were still caught up in the defeat they just experienced. Seeing that their fusion time had come to an end, Naruto powered down and went back to his base form. Naruto sat down on the ground with the two fighters, laughing happily. "Thanks for the fight, Kakarot and Vegeta." When Naruto spoke, Vegeta just let out a soft snort and turned his gaze elsewhere, while Goku couldn't help but flash a big grin. "No problem at all, I've been training a lot too. By the way, Naruto, have you figured out how to combine your Akari and Super Saiyan yet? Wow, you've taken down our fusion 3 times in a row." Goku's doubts weren't just his, Vegeta shared them too. But after catching a glimpse of Naruto smiling with pride, all those doubts were put to rest for good. TCH. Vegeta clicked his tongue at the thought. He wasn't a fan of fusion, just like most Saiyans, but he had put up with it for a couple of key reasons. One was to learn about Super Saiyan 2 from Goku, and the other was to see Naruto's full power up close. This last part was something he would have preferred to go through alone, but he was so far behind Naruto that he didn't really have a choice. "Kakarot, I'm done fusing with you. I'm going to take this guy down on my own," Vegeta announced as he got up, but there was less spite in his tone than there had been 7 years ago. In this version, instead of being the strongest, he's actually the weakest adult Saiyan around, which is quite a change from the original where Goku was the only one stronger than him. Goku, Gohan, Nappa, and Naruto, each of these fighters was either stronger than him or on the same level. This realization made it easier for Vegeta to come to terms with where he stood in the power hierarchy. So, the person standing in front of Naruto wasn't just a potential Majin Vegeta anymore. Instead, it was a Vegeta who had come out of his fight against Buu, a Vegeta who had already transformed for the better. "The years have definitely left their mark on you, haven't they, Vegeta?" Naruto watched Goku and Vegeta bicker back and forth, shaking his head with a smile. After 7 long years of peace, raising a kid, having a caring wife, and seeing the Saiyan race grow, Vegeta had really softened up quite a bit. Naruto really came to see the guy as a partner he could trust completely. "Come on you two, let's not waste your energy on pointless fighting right now." Goku and Vegeta, playfully tugging at each other's ears and noses, turned to Naruto at the same time and asked, "Why's that?" Naruto brushed off the way they were all talking in sync and Vegeta's snorts, and went on to explain why he was saying what he was saying. "Do you remember that World Martial Arts tournament we went to last week? I felt like someone was keeping an eye on us back then." Naruto reminisced about the tournament he had been to, thinking that he would run into the Spopovich duo pretty soon. So, the whole tournament wrapped up, and a week flew by just like that, but still, no sign of Babidi or Dabura showing up. Naruto couldn't really pick up on anything unusual happening on Earth. It could be some kind of magic, but figuring out the cause didn't really help him with his issues right now. The only thing he had going for him now was this weird sense that someone was watching him from somewhere. He could only pull this off in his legendary Super Saiyan form. I can't shake the feeling that someone is watching us closely. I'm not sure what they want, though. No matter what it is, they're keeping it from us. I've got a really bad feeling about this. Naruto had no clue that Majin Buu was even a thing, so this is how he ended up telling the story. But a so-called hunch from the legendary Super Saiyan was enough to get both Goku and Vegeta on high alert. Oh, a sneaky guy, huh? Oh really? Let him come, I've got this covered. Vegeta crossed his arms and said, clearly annoyed. He was really frustrated with himself for not catching on and with the guy who was sneaking a look at them. Goku was quiet, but you could see he was deep in thought. Naruto didn't really say much more about this whole situation. It's not like he didn't make an effort to find the duo. He even asked the dragon a few days back. But the dragon mentioned that tracking them down was just beyond what he could do. Naruto wasn't really surprised by this. The dragon can't influence anyone stronger than its creator unless they agree to it. There's just no chance that Dabura and Babidi would agree to being discovered. I really hope that enough firepower can keep Buu in check. I don't have a lot to work with unless he turns into Kid Buu. Naruto was at a loss about how to handle Buu. It seemed like nothing he had could take down a Buu who wasn't even trying to split into Kid Buu. Getting rid of Buu, no worries, he can bounce back from just smoke. Blowing him to bits, nope, he just reforms and comes back together like putty. So, are we talking about sealing him in some way? He actually shattered the dimensional barrier of the time chamber with just a scream. Good luck trying to seal him up without any magic. He has this wild ability to turn anyone into chocolate, and only he can change them back. Plus, he's immortal and doesn't age at all. He can even breathe in space like it's no big deal. And get this, he can wear out his enemies and then absorb them, adding their strength to his own. How cool is that? It's tough to catch him off guard more than once since he picks up on any tricks he sees. You can't just keep ripping him apart either, because he has the ability to control those pieces. He can morph into whatever he wants, grow extra limbs just for fun, and if he feels like it, he can toy with someone forever. Plus, pretending Buu isn't an issue won't work because he won't hesitate to eliminate anything he finds bothersome. Wow. How am I supposed to take down a monster like this? I really hope he somehow turns into his pure evil self because that's the only way the Spirit Bomb's evil erasing powers will kick in. Man, even with all this power, I'm really not sure I can handle this without Hawkeye, and honestly, I have no clue if Hawkeye can even take this guy down. It might be possible, but Beerus seemed pretty sure that Hawkeye wouldn't have any effect on immortal Zamasu. Given what a monster Buu is, his immortality could be functioning in a similar way. You know, his natural immortality seems to be even more powerful than Zamasu's, and remember, Zamasu got his from the Super Dragon Balls. What's the deal with a creature like this even being around? Naruto held back the urge to rub the bridge of his nose in frustration. He had trained hard and had become incredibly strong enough to stand toe-to-toe with Super Vegito. To put things in perspective, Base Vegito was actually stronger than Gohan Buu. So, Gohan Buu is basically this mix of Good Buu, Evil Buu, Piccolo Buu, Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks Buu, and Ultimate Gohan Buu all bundled together in one awesome package. So, this was just Base Vegito's strength, and Naruto was actually stronger than his Super Saiyan form. You know, the fact that even back then, taking down Buu seemed like an impossible task really shows just how lucky they were in the original, right? Stay tuned for more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. I'm thrilled you watched the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe for even more exciting content coming your way soon.